Welcome back to the channel. This will be the best Limitless team for Matchday 3 in UCL Fantasy. This will be a triple recording and upload today, so show support to this video, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, so always up to date on my content. Both UCL Fantasy and FPL are aiming to get this to the 200 likes on YouTube and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 37 subscribers. Join my UCL Fantasy Mini League. The code is on screen, SEINOF. You can copy and paste that from the description into the UEFA Gaming Hub app or the Champions League website. So just type in UCL Fantasy on any browser and you'll find it very easily. And there's also an auto-join link to make it even easier to become a part of one of the biggest mini leagues in the world. And check out all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, fair likes to my videos, marks many other perks, my Discord server, FPL, UCL Fantasy League, Spotify can all be found in the description. And leave a 5-star review on Spotify. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. I'll be building the best 15-man squad for Matchday 3 specifically, with no budget restrictions, so it's similar to the free hit from FPL, but you can basically have the most expensive players in every single position in UCL Fantasy. After Matchday 2, we start to see some price rises based on performances, and it's not like FPL where you have transfer activity dictating if players go up or down in price, but this is not really too relevant on the Limitless. I'll talk more about this in my wildcard video and the team selection, where I had a very successful wildcard back in Matchday 2, and I'll be discussing my plans for the Limitless and also my free transfers moving forwards. But let's start off with the two goalkeepers, and this will be entirely different to what I'll discuss in the best wildcard squad video. No matter which chip you're activating, the wildcard, Limitless or free transfers, what you want to ensure is that your goalkeepers play on different days so you can maximize that sort of opportunity, and you can bring on a player from the Wednesday for the lowest scoring players from the Tuesday, and that will include this position, of course, and you can potentially get a clean sheet. You're going to increase your chances of getting a return from your goalkeepers that way. And one of the main issues we have with our wildcard squads, or moving a bit longer term, is that there aren't too many goalkeeper combinations. I've discussed all of them in my previous podcast, but for Matchday 3 on the Limitless, we don't need to worry about that. Just ensure you've got one Tuesday goalkeeper and one on the Wednesday. They will clash in future match days, but that is irrelevant on this chip. So I've gone for Yann Sommer facing Union Saint-Gilloise away, and whilst Joseph Martinez has started a few games in Serie A, Yann Sommer is still the first choice as confirmed by the Inter Milan director, which I highlighted in a deadline stream very recently. And I think Inter Milan are certainly worth doubling up on defensively up until Matchday 5, and Dumfries is the standout overall, but Yann Sommer is one of the best goalkeepers around. And that was the case last season when Inter Milan reached a final, and he might leave by the end of this campaign, but he's going to be a good UCL Fantasy option until Inter Milan are eliminated, or if they end up reaching the final once again. But the Wednesday goalkeeper will be different to what I discussed in recent Limitless and Wildcard podcasts, and that's Manuel Neuer, who only has 4 points to his name in UCL Fantasy this season, and Bayern Munich have been more appealing from an attacking perspective. They aren't keeping the clean sheets, and Club Brugge won't be the easiest of fixtures, but I still think Bayern Munich at home have a good chance of a clean sheet, and they are ranked quite highly in the clean sheet odds, which you'll see later on in this podcast. But I think Sommer and Neuer is the best goalkeeper pairing on the Limitless, because you have the likes of David Raya facing Atletico Madrid at home, and whilst Arsenal are in the top 3 for the clean sheet odds, I still think Bayern Munich are more likely this week. Then you've got a few other options here and there, like Donnarumma away to Villarreal. That's not too shabby, and Man City have kept consecutive clean sheets in the Premier League against Brentford and Everton, but I still think that's going to be a different kettle of fish. And then you look at the other options, and ultimately I think Neuer and Sommer is going to do the business for Matchday 3. One of them will keep a clean sheet, and that will be enough for your Limitless squad. I'm only going to recommend one defensive double up for this Limitless team, and that's going to be Denzel Dumfries with Yann Sommer to target that Union Saint-Gilloise fixture. Now, they're top of the Belgian league, and whilst Inter Milan are also capitalising on Napoli's defeat over the weekend, and they're also top of Serie A, Inter Milan will be the heavy favourites to win this game, and they're also ranked very highly in terms of the clean sheet odds, and they typically are, unless they have a difficult fixture on paper. And Dumfries has so many avenues to points with goals, assists, he can win player of the matches. He can get ball recovery, so he's a complete package in terms of this defensive line. We saw what he did against Barcelona in the semi-finals last season, and even in the big games he can deliver some massive returns. So Denzel Dumfries is not a must-have, but one of the most exciting defenders to own, even though he's quite template with 29% ownership, unlike some differentials I highlighted earlier like Manuel Neuer with only 4% ownership overall. But I'm also going to go for another template pick who has 12 points to his name this season. He has been overshadowed by a few teammates, and that's Hakimi. He still costs 6 million, whilst the likes of Nuno Mendes has gone up to 6.1 million, but I still think Hakimi has the higher ceiling, and we saw that multiple times in the Club World Cup, which I covered throughout the summer, and also last season in the Champions League as well, where he was one of the highest scoring players across all positions. I think he was only bettered by Rafinha in the end. And whilst it's Bayer Leverkusen away, and Grimaldo is looking incredible this season with so many goals, he even took a penalty for Bayer Leverkusen over the weekend. The German outfit are conceding so many goals, and that was another free that they shipped in that recent Bundesliga match against Mainz. So I think Hakimi is definitely the one to go for, but as much as I've said all of that stuff about Bayer Leverkusen being quite weak defensively, PSG did draw 3-3 against Strasbourg, and they're now sitting second in Ligue 1 behind Marseille. So they also have their deficiencies defensively, a lot of injury problems, and some players could return over the coming weeks. That will certainly bolster their squad, but Hakimi will still be a solid option. He'll tick along nicely, and I think one massive return will happen throughout the league phase. And for those of you that are wildcarding, I think Chevalier in goal, partnering really would be a very good sort of goalkeeper combination, which I'll talk about as well in that wildcard podcast. I think it's between that and one other duo, which I've currently got in my own team selection. But let's cover a different defence, arguably the best right now in world football, and that's with Arsenal and Gabriel, who in FPL has gotten 13 points against Newcastle, 9 against West Ham, and then 12 against Fulham. So he's getting a goal or an assist, he's getting defensive contribution points, which is similar to the ball recovery system from UCL Fantasy. And Gabriel has been doing the business in the Champions League as well, with 15 points so far. It was only 6 points in Matchday 2, but he got a healthy 9-pointer against Athletic Bilbao in that 2-0 victory back in Matchday 1. And Arsenal are one of several teams to have a 100% record and to not have conceded in the Champions League so far this season. And whilst you have Calafiori, Timber, Saliba and David Raya, they're all viable options. I think Gabriel is the best of the lot, which I talked about in my FPL coverage as well, but I wouldn't mind doubling up on Arsenal in future match days. The problem is, it's Atletico Madrid this week, Bayern Munich is around the corner. Apart from that though, I think Arsenal have good fixtures overall. They rank quite highly in the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating, up until matchday 8 throughout the entire league phase, and that's when they face Kara Almaty to wrap things up in January. But let's complete this defensive line with two more options here, and one of them is going to be very controversial because his team just lost yet another game. That's 4 in a row across all competitions, but Virgil van Dijk is incredible when it comes to ball recoveries, and Frankfurt are scoring a lot of goals, to be fair, and also shipping in a lot as well. But I still think Van Dijk is a solid option on a Limitless. I wouldn't recommend him longer term, and Liverpool do have some tough fixtures like Real Madrid coming up fairly soon, but I think Van Dijk is still worth consideration at the very least. He is quite template with 30% ownership, but he's probably the weakest of these options. And the last option is Jules Koundé, who only has 8 points so far in this Champions League campaign, but I think Barcelona have a great chance of a clean sheet. They are ranked top against Olympiacos at home in the early kickoff, and we do get those lineups before the deadline locks in. So in tomorrow's stream, I'll be covering the Barcelona and Olympiacos lineups, even Kaira Almaty against Paphos, and I think Barcelona is the one of main interest, so then we can double or triple up on them with our Limitless wildcard squads and also with free transfers. The likes of Yamal and Rashford will be the most appealing. Rafinha is still out at the moment, and Lewandowski is also definitively unavailable, but I think defensively one of Koundé or Balde could be worth it, and once Joan Garcia is back, Barcelona will keep more clean sheets, and I also think he'd be the sort of defensive coverage of choice for the Catalans. But on a Limitless, I think Koundé would take the cake. And for those that are still saying, no, I do not want Virgil van Dijk, I don't trust Liverpool, 4 losses in a row and they look so suspect defensively, 5 big chances conceded against Man United, you can remove Virgil van Dijk and maybe triple up on a defence and go for DeMarco for Inter Milan. That's one differential way of playing the Limitless this week, and maybe even doubling up on that Barcelona defence, but I'd rather go for one midfielder and a forward in UCL Fantasy. Speaking of which, we're now going to go to those positions as well. Let me know down in the comment section below, would you go for DeMarco or Van Dijk, triple up on Inter Milan, or maybe diversify the defensive coverage, and maybe you want to go for another defender entirely to cover a different club, and you might back a different team to keep that clean sheet in matchday 3. And don't forget, a lot of these defenders have ball recovery potential, they can score or assist both from set pieces and open play, so they are the full packages in UCL Fantasy. Despite an underwhelming start to this campaign, Mohamed Salah produced 10 points in matchday 1 against Atletico Madrid, and that was sort of vintage Salah. He still has that in him, and he scored a brace for Egypt over the international break, but for Liverpool in the Premier League, he has certainly underwhelmed with only 2 goals and 2 fantasy assists in that competition. But I still back him to do quite well in a fixture like this against Frankfurt, which could be quite open. And that's where you could definitely argue that going for Frankfurt and Liverpool attackers is the play rather than Virgil van Dijk and all these Liverpool defenders who maybe aren't worth it at this moment in time. But I think Salah is still worth on the Limitless. I'd probably include him in this 15-man squad. He might not be as appealing as he normally is, but typically in league phases, he is one of the highest goal scorers, and it would not surprise me to see him bag a massive return against Frankfurt away, and this could have 4 or 5 goals in this match, depending on how both teams approach it from the get-go. But the second midfielder is going to be a very consistent performer for the last year or so in Michael Olise. He can be quite frustrating at times, but he scored a massive goal against Borussia Dortmund to give Bayern Munich the win, a 2-1 victory for the Bavarians, who are top of the Bundesliga with one of the best ever starts for any club in a European top 5 league. And Olise is going to be the second best Bayern Munich attacker because Harry Kane is obviously streets ahead of everybody else in that team and also amongst any other club with the exception of Mbappe and Erling Haaland up front. But Olise has been consistent for Bayern Munich with the goals and assists, and he's not even taking any penalties. It's all from open play pretty much. He can take some set pieces, but Olise is definitely worth it against Club Brugge, and he's fairly fixture-proof overall. Next up is Kevin De Bruyne, a bit more of a differential with 6% ownership, but Napoli lost 1-0 against Torino over the weekend, and they slipped up a little bit in Serie A, but De Bruyne is still worth it long term with Napoli's fixtures in mind, and also in fixtures like this against PSV away. So I think De Bruyne is a solid option. He got 2 assists against Sporting back in matchday 2, and he's another example of a fixture-proof player. He's a quality set-piece taker, and from open play, he can score from distance, which gives you an extra point for scoring a goal from outside the box, and he is just a complete package as a midfielder. So Kevin De Bruyne does make it into this team as well, but you can go for Calhanoglu if you want that Inter Milan offensive coverage. Marcus Thuram is ruled out, and whilst I like Lautaro Martinez, I still think he's a level below the 3 forwards I'm going to discuss later on, who are template, the most expensive, but also the top goal scorers in their respective divisions and in the Champions League so far this season. But let's complete this midfield, and one of them has to be in this Limitless team in Lamine Yamal, who made his return from injury over the weekend. He has been suffering from different injury problems, mainly with his groin over the course of the campaign, but I think Yamal will score his first Champions League goal of the season against Olympiacos, and we do get that Barcelona lineup, so you don't have to keep asking, is he going to start or not? I'm not even sure if that's going to be the case, because we're going to find out tomorrow during the deadline stream. So I think Yamal should be included in your sort of provisional squad. Maybe have some contingency plans just in case. The same goes for every other player, because you never will know what's going to happen over the next 24 hours. I know team news and injury updates will be covered in that deadline stream tomorrow, but Yamal is probably my favourite midfielder in UCL Fantasy for matchday 3, and in the long term I'd love to have him, but it probably means selling one of Haaland, Kane or Mbappe, and that's something I'll discuss in my team selection. But the last midfielder is Bukayo Saka. It'll be very difficult to have both Saka and Yamal in the same team on a wild card or with free transfers, but on the Limitless, it's possible. That's the biggest appeal of this booster. You can go for the most expensive players in each position and not have to worry about the consequences that way. And I think Saka and Yamal are still going to be right up there over the course of the season. And while Saka does play against Atletico Madrid, I still think Arsenal have the edge there, and Saka played terrifically well against Fulham, and despite not getting a goal or assist, he got 7 points in Fantasy Premier League because of defensive contributions, and he got some bonus points. So I think Saka has a decent chance of winning player of the matches in the future. He can score, assist very regularly, and I think he's getting back to his best for the Gunners, and he's the best Arsenal attacker, that's for sure. Victor Gyökeres has been underperforming and hasn't scored in quite a while for club and country. I think that's 9 consecutive games, and whilst I think he'll break that drought very soon, I will not include him on the Limitless because these 3 forwards are the best around. There was a huge conversation about Mbappe versus Kane for the captaincy in matchday 2. If you own both of them, it didn't really matter if you went for Kane, who scored a brace, was subbed off quite early against Paphos after 64 minutes, yet he won player of the match, which kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. But Mbappe scored that hat-trick against Kara Almaty. He has the tougher fixture against Juventus, and they both play on the same day again, so there will be a captaincy conversation, but maybe not to the same level, with Kane having the better fixture on paper. Juventus are winless in the last 6 matches, but I still think Mbappe is worth including, and both of them stand out amongst all premiums and forwards in the game, and they are underpriced. They both cost 10.6 million now, but they started off at 10.5, and ultimately it is not easy, but I think it is accessible to have both of them at the same time. The same goes for Erling Haaland, who still costs 10.5 million, and whilst he's 5th in terms of points scored amongst UCL Fantasy forwards, he's behind Thuram, who is injured and he's not going to play in Matchday 3. Also Burkhardt, who is a budget forward for Frankfurt facing Liverpool. He also scored a few goals over the weekend and could be quite appealing, especially if you want Lamine Yamal in the midfield. But I still prefer having Haaland, Mbappe and Kane right now. And on the Limitless, that could be debatable because Yamal has the better fixture compared to Mbappe. But with the Frenchman scoring in virtually every single game, that's 11 consecutive matches where Mbappe has scored. He is just in incredible form right now. He scored the winner over the weekend on Sunday against Getafe as Real Madrid got another victory and sit top of La Liga, and Erling Haaland scored a quick-fire brace in the second half against Everton, and this front three is unbeatable when it comes to the consistency, the massive returns, and the captaincy. So the way it works in UCL Fantasy, you captain a player on the Tuesday first, and then if needed, you can then switch it to a Wednesday option, and on the 21st, on the Tuesday, I would go for Erling Haaland as the captain, but there is certainly a case for Lamine Yamal, and on the Wednesday it's the same thing. Do you go for Mbappe, Kane, or maybe somebody a little bit left field? But I think if you want to go a little bit differential, I would go for Yamal as the captain on Tuesday and kind of back Barcelona to score a lot of goals and Yamal to be involved. And then on the Wednesday, I would captain Harry Kane, who scored against Borussia Dortmund despite playing a deeper role as the attacking midfielder. Jackson started up front and Kane still won the Player of the Match award in the Bundesliga, and he actually described it as one of his best ever performances throughout his career. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Who would you captain on the Tuesday and Wednesday? I would say Yamal and Kane is a very good sort of duo, but Erling Haaland, you can't go wrong with him. You can also see the clean sheet odds on screen, and this will be talked about in the deadline stream tomorrow. Barcelona are top with a 54% probability against Olympiacos at home in the early kickoff. Athletic Bilbao are second. They kept a clean sheet over the weekend in a goalless draw. They're facing Karabag at home, who actually have won both games in the Champions League so far, and they are right up there in the group stage table. Arsenal are third, and they're another team with a 100% record. They haven't conceded yet, and they face Atletico Madrid at home. And Chelsea are fourth, facing Ajax, and they've got the exact same probability as Arsenal at 45%, and Bilbao is only 51% despite being second in the overall list. Bayern Munich are down in 5th, facing Club Brugge at home, who have been very solid overall, and Bayern Munich's chances are also a little bit low, of course, at 43%, and Newcastle actually are joint 6th with a 40% chance against Benfica at home, and down in 36th is Olympiacos with a 7% probability against Barcelona away, and I will show you all the other clean sheet odds in terms of those ranked a little bit lower than the top 6. That includes Real Madrid, who are technically joint 6th there, Atalanta, Inter Milan, PSG, Borussia Dortmund, Man City, Galatasaray are all up there. You've also got Paphos as well, who are facing Kairat Almaty, but it's quite interesting to see Inter Milan ranked quite low there overall, and Union Saint-Gilloise won 3-1 over the weekend, but Inter Milan would still be heavy favourites to win that game, and a clean sheet is certainly on the horizon. So tripling up on Inter Milan might not be everyone's cup of tea. If you want to go for someone a little bit different defensively, you can certainly do so with Virgil van Dijk, for example, or even Arsenal and doubling up on the Gunners defensively. But I have to say, if you wanted to go for a double up in Inter Milan defensively with Sommer in goal and Dumfries, and you don't want DeMarco or Van Dijk, I would say go for a Chelsea defender like Reece James or Gusto. I think that would be the perfect solution. They are ranked quite highly in the clean sheet odds, as you can see, and they are technically joint third with Arsenal, and Ajax have been terrible this season. They lost 2-0 at home this weekend, and Chelsea got a 3-0 win in the early kickoff on Saturday against Nottingham Forest. So I think going for one of Gusto, James, even Chalobah could definitely work out for you, and James is looking in great form right now. The minutes and also the injury concerns are always going to be a bit of an issue, but I think Gusto would be a bit safer. I think you can't go wrong with either option, and you do have the squad depth overall to compensate for any benchings or reduced minutes that you may have. The same goes for blanks as well. So after the Tuesday games, sub out your lowest scoring players for those yet to play on the Wednesday. That's all covered throughout my UCL Fantasy content. And in terms of those ranked near the bottom of the clean sheet odds, Olympiacos are in 36th, so they're last. Club Brugge, Ajax, Karabag, and Eintracht Frankfurt are also in that bottom 5, and some of them might be underrated in the long term, mainly from an attacking perspective. I think Frankfurt and Club Brugge could actually be quite decent in the long term. Their fixtures, of course, in Matchday 3 are quite tough, which is why they're ranked so lowly overall, and I don't trust them defensively, but they've got some decent assets in the midfield and forward line. We saw Burkhardt, of course, for example, who only cost 5.1 million. He has more UCL fantasy points than Erling Haaland, so he could definitely be considered in the long term. But I think the clean sheet odds overall are quite fair, and they can be very helpful when building your defensive lines. Refer to my goal scorer odds and also the top 10 captains in the wildcard video coming up very soon. And in my team selection, I'll talk about my transfer plans after activating the wildcard in Matchday 2. I now have free transfers, and there are so many different avenues, and I will be locking in my squad in tomorrow's deadline stream. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found insightful, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, both UCL Fantasy and FPL. Let's get this video to the 200 likes, and we're also very close towards 37 subscribers. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, further access to my videos, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the UCL Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you tomorrow for that deadline stream. All members and patrons have a massive advantage of getting priority to comments in my videos and also in streams like that, which are very hectic, but I look forward to seeing you there. I'll be answering as many questions as possible and ensuring you have the best coverage for UCL Fantasy.